Now, I left you last time with a question. We come to a long section of the Hagaddah now, which starts with the word Tseilma, which means go out and learn. And I pointed out that in the Babylonian Talmud, an invitation to an analysis is Toshma, come and hear. And in the Yerushalmi, it's Tochazi, come and see. And in the Zohar, it's Tochami, which also means come and see. So we have two things to explain. Number one, the difference between hearing and seeing. And the other is the difference between come and go, in order to cover all four of the sources. So come means the speaker is someplace, and either he's inviting the person he's speaking to join him, or that they should together go to some place. It's an invitation of sharing, of closeness, of interaction. The difference in hearing and seeing, one of the many differences is this. Hearing takes time. Seeing can be pretty instant. Yes, there are pictures you have to analyze. Yes, that does happen. But it also happens that when you look at the surroundings, in a few seconds, you can orient yourself and you know the basic structure and contents. Hearing, perforce, is over time because you hear one word and another word and another word. Hearing requires memory in order to put it together. So you are much more actively engaged in hearing than you are in seeing. In seeing, you can be to a great extent passive. This is why people don't like to read books, because reading books requires thinking. And seeing, that's why people like to watch videos or listen to videos or podcasts rather than actually have to read a book. Even a podcast is a problem because you have to remember over time and analyze. So in Babylonia, where the Talmud applies the verse, Be'eretz Machshakim Hushivani Hashem, God placed me in a dark dwelling. That's Babylon. When things are dark, you can't communicate by vision. You have to communicate by speaking. And that's why the invitation in the Babylonian Talmud is Toshma, come and hear. It was a place without light. Eretz Israel, where there is light, where both the Yerushalmi and the Zohar were written, there you could say, come and see. When it says at Mamar Sinai, the whole people saw the voices, it means something which is usually spoken was taken in by vision. Something that usually takes time and thought and care and memory and analysis to absorb, here they could see it. They could see it and take it in as a vision. And by the way, I wasn't really aware of this, but I saw now there is a makor in Chazal which reverses it also. They were shomi mesenira, which I don't understand at all. They heard that which is usually seen. I didn't know about it, so I didn't take it into account. Now, but again, both of these are come, which means let us share and experience and discuss it and analyze it together. Here it's tzei umad. Tzei is singular. There's no implication here of sharing with anybody else. And go out and learn. So some of the Meforshim say go out means go out of your normal way of thinking, go out of your normal presuppositions, your perceptions, your assumptions about the world in which you live. Because what you're going to be taught here may contradict what you seem to see, what you think you see, whereas in truth you don't see what's going on around you. So let's keep that in mind as we go through the psukim and see where the content and the implications challenge our normal ways of thinking. What did Lavan, the Aramean, want to do to Jacob, our father? Pharaoh made a decree against the males. They had a prophecy, which they derived from their magical practices, that at a certain point in time, a savior for the Jewish people was going to be born. And of course, saviors are male, not female. That's common to the ancient world. So at that time, they made a decree to drown all the Jewish newborn males in the river, and they did. At a certain point in time, maybe they even drowned their own because it wasn't clear whether the Savior would be born to the Jewish people or as an Egyptian. And as you probably know, Moses was born as a Jew, but then was raised in the palace as an Egyptian. So you could see how the prediction would be confused. And they made a decree to destroy all the newborn males so as to hopefully destroy the becoming Savior of the Jewish people. But Lavan bikesh lakos hakol. Lavan intended to uproot everything, not just the males of one generation or one short period of time, but he wanted to uproot everything. Now, where did he want to do that? How did he want to do that? Shenamar, as it says, well, let's see. Here's a verse. Arami Oved Avi. Now, those three words can be read in two different ways. Indeed, where the Hagaddah is teaching it, you could be read an Aramean, Arami. Oved, which means to destroy or to be lost or to wander or. But it could be read to destroy. And Aramean was destroying, did destroy, tried to destroy Avi, my father. It could be read that way. But it also could be read Arami Oved, a wandering Aramean, Avi was my father. My father was a wandering Aramean. He started out in Kasdim, and then he went to Haran, and from Haran he went to Israel. From Israel he went to Egypt. From Egypt he went back to Israel. He was going from place to place. So already we're being told Lavan wanted to destroy everything. But the verse that's being used is an ambiguous verse. That's so obvious that's what it means. Could it mean at least two different things? Now when you read the story of Jacob and Lavan, this is how it goes. Jacob has got the blessing from his father and a charge to be the third patriarch, and he's got a charge from his father and mother to go and get married. He leaves his house. He goes to the area in which Lavan lives. And he's at the well, and Rachel, Lavan's daughter, comes out to the well. And Jacob meets her, sends a message that he's there. He's her uncle. And he's her cousin, right, he's a cousin. So Lavan runs out to the well and welcomes him, you're my kinsman, so on and so on. That's very nice. A month goes by, and he immediately takes up residence with Lavan. That's all it says. But a month goes by, and Lavan says to him, just because you are my relative, should you serve me for nothing? So a reader who's awake and has not had 3 martinis in between says, oh ho. So Lavan put him to work right away. He's already been working for a month. Lavan hasn't given him a farthing, not an agorah, not a penny. And now Lavan's sort of getting embarrassed. He's working full time. He's not paying him anything. So he asks him, so you think, well, this is Lavan is his uncle, and he's took him in with nothing and put him to work right away. Okay, but why should Lavan? Why should Jacob get a free ride? Okay. And Jacob says, I want to serve you 7 years for the sake of your agreement. I should marry your younger daughter, Rachel. And Lavan agrees. 7 years go by, and Lavan agrees to celebrate the wedding with Rachel. And on the wedding night, he switches Leah and sends her into Jacob. And Jacob wakes up in the morning. I'm skipping a lot of details. I just want to get to the point that I want to make. And behold, it's Leah, not Rachel. He comes to his father-in-law and says, what did you do to me? Listen, my friend, we don't do things here like that. To give away the younger before the older? Ugh, you should have known better. You should have figured it out. That wouldn't happen. Finish celebrating the values of this one. I'll give you the other one also for another 7 years of work. By the way, it doesn't mean that Lavan intended originally to swindle Jacob. He agreed to 7 years of work. Who says that Leah is not going to be married in those 7 years? But when the end of the 7 years comes and Leah is still not married, then Lavan says, listen, I have him under my control. I'm here with my kinsmen, with my whole city. I can do this and get away with it. So he does. So Jacob works another 14 years, another 7 years. Then he wants to go home. And Lavan says, I see that I've received a blessing through you. Please stay. Jacob stays because the one explanation I heard that I could understand is out of gratitude. Even though when Lavan took him in, he put him to work instantly, but he took him in. We are told to have gratitude for the Egyptians that took us in. Even though we ended up as slaves, they take you in, you have to have gratitude. So he stays another 6 years. Then Lavan's sons turn against him, and he runs. Lavan catches up with him and says, why did you run? Why did you steal my gods? You did things that a person shouldn't do. You deceived me. And then Lavan says to Yaakov, I have in my power to do you all evil. Yesh biadi la'asos lechem ra. Plural. But your God appeared to me last night and said, don't speak to Jacob about good or evil. In other words, if your God is mixing in, I'm not going to fight him. But I want you to know, I have the power to do evil to you. So Jacob says, I don't have your gods, makes a search, doesn't find any gods. Jacob says, I worked for you for 20 years, and I served you day and night, and I never took the losses that, never claimed exemption for the losses that a shepherd should have exemption from. And now, if I ran because if I hadn't run, you would have stolen your daughters from me and stolen the flocks from me. Then Lavan says, oh, how are you making up such stories? And he says, the children are mine, and the flocks are mine. What would I do to my own family, to my own possessions is the word he's using, when 10 minutes ago he said, I have in my hand to do you all evil? What did Lavan want? What was he planning? So the Mefarshim explain, Lavan says, I know Jacob. I know who he is. He has these weird dreams. Monotheism and the land of Israel. And listen, he's a dreamer. He's not connected to this world. He has no clue what's going on. Let him sit with me. His wives are my daughters. The other wives are my handmaids. He's living in my culture, in my area. His dreams will die with him. The family belongs to me. It doesn't belong to him. He's lost. That's Bikesh La'akar Zakol. He wanted to uproot everything, not to annihilate his own family. No, they're his grandchildren, grandchildren. But to possess them spiritually and culturally, and that he thought he had in his hand. And Jacob knew that. Jacob understood that. And that's why he ran. The immediate trigger was the fact that Lavan and his children turned against him. But he knew what he was running away from. Now, it says that, we read this in the verse from Joshua, that God says, I gave to Esau the land of Seir as inheritance, and Jacob and his children went down to Egypt. So the Netziv has an essay on anti-Semitism. But he says like this, Jacob went down to Egypt. Not exactly. First he went to Lavan. He spent 20 years in Haran, where Lavan is. Then he came back, and then he went to Egypt. Why? So you should read this essay. He fills it out in great detail. And he says there's a secret to surviving in exile. The secret is Badad Yeshev. Jacob has to dwell alone. He shouldn't be counted among the nations, among the peoples. He has to be separate, different, distinguished. As long as he keeps himself separate, then he will survive. Not only that, but the Goyim will appreciate him and be friendly to him. The minute he tries to assimilate with them, then he's lost. And he quotes a very interesting verse, a verse from Psalms, from Tehillim. V'hafoch libam lisnoas hamo. Kadosh Baruch Hu overturned their hearts to hate his people. Says the Metziv, as long as Joseph and his brothers dwelt in Goshen alone, as long as they kept bris milah, so they were physically distinguished from the Egyptians, they were the upper class. They were nobility. As soon as the brothers died out, and it was just their descendants who were there, all but tribe Levi stopped doing bris milah, and they started to spread out. They began to live intermingled among the Egyptians. It says, "Vayafoch libam l'snoas samo." Kadosh Baruch Hu overturned their hearts to hate his people. So you understand, it's not saying there's a natural process. It might be a regular process, but it's not a natural process. This can be the way Kadosh Baruch Hu deals with Jewish assimilation from generation to generation, from millennium to millennium. I pointed out yesterday, those people who authored the final solution were the Germans, among whom we have been the most assimilated. So the Netziv says, the reason why it was arranged that Jacob should run away from Lavan is because he wouldn't have survived there. In Egypt, he could be separate. He could be distinguished, divided from the rest of the nation. And there he could do it. And that's what we have to learn in later generations. Now, as I read the essay, I didn't see him explain why with Lavan he couldn't, but I think it's pretty obvious. He's married to Lavan's daughters. His children are Lavan's grandchildren. What's he going to do? Live in a mountain someplace? Live in a cave? He can't do that. It says there he couldn't be separated, distinguished, divided, so there he'd be lost. That's why Kadosh Baruch Hu arranged that he should end up going down to Egypt, where at least he could practice it. When he failed to practice it, things got bad, and then the slavery started. Yeah.
When it comes to, I want to know exactly, is the ikr that you should not intermingle, or is the ikr that you should be by yourself? In the terms
Does sound like the same thing.
No,
not intermingling and not being by yourself sound like the same thing.
Well, you can have a Jewish community in a very big city, like a big city. You can have like a Jewish community that's a minority, or you can have just, is it just the fact that it's the minority, or is it mamash you should just be by yourself with your family and no one?
Well, look, I think what you mean to say is even if you're in a big city like New York City with millions of people, you could still have your own neighborhoods. You could live together.
But Jews are pronounced there. It's like, this is the Jewish area. This is like...
That's right. That's what I'm saying. And that after all, where does the Netziv saying this could be done? It could be done in Egypt. Egypt was an empire. It didn't say to go live in the desert someplace. They're living in Egypt.
You should live with the other Jews, you say.
Again, so you have the Jewish neighborhood, right? I know non-Jews living in Williamsburg, not Williamsburg, where the Satmar Hasidim live, next to Monroe? Huh?
I don't know.
No, that's New Jersey. Oh, God.
Oh, that place upstate?
Yeah.
Isn't that Kiryat?
They changed it. They call it Kiryas Yoel now.
I forget what it's called, but I understand.
That's a Jewish community. This language that's spoken there is Yiddish. Everything goes on is from. They're living in New York. New York is one place among 360 million Americans, but that doesn't mean they're not distinguished. They're distinguished. They're divided. They're separate. They have their own identity, their own culture. Right? That's the point. The point is not just being on an island someplace, because Egypt was the paradigm. So this is what Lavan wanted to do. Now, Lavan did not, like today people are, in a certain sense, more honest. And honesty reveals their brutality and their stupidity. But, they tell you, we hate you, we're going to tear you down, we're going to get you canceled from Facebook, because we're going to burn down your house because we believe in diversity and inclusion. But Lavan wasn't like that. Lavan was pretending friendship as long as it's friendship on my terms. As long as the children come to me for their birthday parties. As long as they come to me for their celebration of bagrus, of maturity. As long as they come to me for their employment, for their basic education. We can have a joint bank account. It's okay with me. I don't mind. As long as I own the culture. I own the psychology. That's bikesh la'akos hakol. That's not obvious. And it's not obvious later in time when you deal with non-Jewish cultures which present themselves as friendly. And I had a fellow who got involved in Hinduism, and he said, I don't know, you seem to be, it said to me, you seem to be so exclusive. Oh, you and only you are right, only you and you are true. The Hindus have room for everybody. Everybody has a place. Everybody's accepted. Everybody is validated, so on and so on. And it seems to be they're much more tolerant, much more open, much more realistic. I said, you didn't study it carefully enough. If you study it more carefully, you'll find out that from the point of view of Hinduism, every other religion is wrong. But it is an acceptable, appropriate, valid stage on the way to discovering the truth. They don't kill you because you're wrong. That's like saying you have a person who's learning how to ride a bike and he fell off 3 times today, let's kill him. He fell off 3 times, no, that's how you learn to ride. You learn to ride by falling off a few times until you get the right balance, and then you ride better. Or a person who's learning a new language and makes mistakes. If you're not prepared to make mistakes, don't try to learn a new language. You'll always make mistakes. And you'll graduate to the point where you won't make mistakes. Well, you may at least graduate to that point. So, their attitude is, as far as the picture of the world is concerned, how the world works, what its basis is, where it's going, what its ultimate values are, all the other religions are false. They're just acceptable stages of falsehood on the way to developing into the truth. That's not acceptance. That's not openness. It just means it won't kill you in the meantime. But as far as truth is concerned, they're all wrong. So that's the attitude that we have here that you have to be very, very careful about. And it has applications to our own times as well. If you would tell a Jew in 1918, Germany is your worst enemy, he would not know what you're talking about. You have to be nuts. Germany's my worst enemy? Herzl believed in the progressive faith of the 19th century. The world is becoming more cosmopolitan, becoming less religious, more naturalistic, more humanistic, adopting enlightened values, and sharing, and so on and so on. And Germany was at the top of the list. Anyway, Tzei Umad, be prepared to let go of your preconceived conditions, at least to look again, and look a third time. Try to escape your assumptions and your defensiveness and your rationalizations, and try to see the world the way it is. So, and this is what the pasuk says according to the Netziv. And Aramean wanted to destroy my father, and he went down to Egypt. Now, what happened was he went to Lavan, then he came back to Israel. He stayed there for years. Then he went down to Egypt because Joseph was sold to Egypt, and then eventually there was a famine, and he went down. It was a long time later. What the verse is telling you is that one replaced the other. Yeah, there was time in between. So what? In terms of the purpose of the history, you started off with Lavan, and Lavan would have been a disaster. Lavan would have been able to overwhelm what Jacob was building. Therefore, he went to Egypt instead of that. After all, what we saw last time, the covenant of the pieces, 400 years, doesn't say where it would be. Doesn't say where it would be in Egypt. You'll be in a land that doesn't belong to you. That certainly describes Lavan and his area of Haran. It's a strange land. land where they're strangers, it doesn't belong to them, but that couldn't fulfill the prophecy. Because if so, the prophecy wouldn't have come true. They would have been swamped and overwhelmed. Very, very deep, interesting essay by the Netziv, which Rabbi Meiselman introduced me to. Okay, now you have a long section which is built as follows. In book of Deuteronomy, Parshas Kisavo, you have a description of bikurim, first fruits. Jews who are farmers identify the first fruits of the year and put them in a basket, bring them to Yerushalayim and give them to a Kohen and go through a ceremony of presenting it. And then the Kohen eats it. You know, if you think of it as a tax, it's probably about 0.1%. It's like nothing in terms of value, in terms of quantity, but that's what he has to do. Now, there's a 4-verse description there of what the Jew says. He makes a declaration. We were slaves in Egypt, and God took us out, and so forth and so on. This section of the Hagaddah is based on those 4 verses, and what it does is it takes a phrase from one of those 4 verses and then explains it on the basis of quotations from the book of Exodus. Yeah, I know you would have thought that if you're telling the story of the Exodus, you just read the book of Exodus. But Jews don't do that. Jews, nothing simple, nothing just straightforward. You start over here and then you bring comments from over there so you can explain them. So you have to know why you do that. What's the point of it? The point of it is to acknowledge who is reading the Hagaddah. Who is this? For whom is the Hagaddah written? What is his position in life? At one point in time, for hundreds of years, we did this service in the land of Israel. We were reasonably safe, we were secure, we were prosperous, healthy. So we're looking back on the past. Also, as I said last time, and as I will say again a couple of more times, we're trying to relive the past in the present. So the Hagaddah says, I know where you are. You're like this successful farmer who's bringing his first fruits to the temple. I want you to integrate this description of the past into your present condition. But by doing this, the Hagaddah is being realistic and saying, I know that when you read these words, you can't just say they're describing you, because you're not there. You're hundreds of years later, and you're doing well, thank you. We know that. We want you to be able to bring the past into the present, into that kind of present. That's one little sliver of what it means. I'm sure it means many, many other things as well. So, here we go, piece by piece. Vayered Mitzrayim. Jacob went down to Egypt. Onus al pi hadibur. He did not go down voluntarily. He did not go down because he wanted to be in Egypt. There was a famine, and his son turned out to be the viceroy in Egypt. It was clear that this was the right thing to do, even though he asked for divine guidance as he went down. It became clear. But were it not for the famine, and were it not for the fact that his son was viceroy in Egypt, he wouldn't have dreamt of leaving Eretz Yisrael to go out to Egypt. That wasn't part of his plan. Vayagar Sham. Now, lagur means to be, I don't know if we have a word for it. Sorry? Yeah, I mean, I was going to say in English, but sojourn is not English, clearly. I mean, when's the last time you heard somebody say, so even the New York Times doesn't use that word, when they're pretending to be intellectual. Visiting. Going visiting. Malamed shelo yarad Yaakov Avinu lishtakei b'Mitzrayim. He did not go down to take up residence in Egypt. Ela lagur sham, to be a visitor there. Shenemar. Now, this is when the brothers came down and they sort of made a speech to Pharaoh to identify who they are, what they're doing. This is what they said. Lagur ba'aretz lagur again, the same word, ger, gur, to visit. Back in Israel, Canaan, there's no pasture land because the famine is very severe there. And now, Goshen, let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. Now, Yeshivu and Lagur aren't the same thing. Indeed, by saying Lagur, what they're saying is that their plan is not to be Yoshev. So they're sort of straddling the fence. They don't want, depending on what happens, they don't want Pharaoh to come back and say after 2.5 years, listen, 18 months, 36 months, 24 months. 24 months, that's enough. Enough already. Lagur, you said. Lagur is to visit. 2.5 years is enough of a visit. Either get lost or go to work or whatever. You don't want to say that. But their intention was not that. Their intention was to be there until the agriculture rectified itself, and then they would be able to go back.
Did it ever?
So the truth is this. It's very interesting. There was Joseph said to Pharaoh, he saw 7 good cows eaten up by 7 bad cows, 7 grains of corn eaten up by 7 bad grains of corn. He says, it's going to be 14 years, 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. And this is how to protect yourself during the famine. He gave them that whole prophecy. What happened was, there were 7 years of plenty, then the famine started. At the end of the second year, Jacob and his children came down to Egypt. The famine stopped. This decree of the final 5 years of famine was spread out over, I don't know how many of the coming years, so that their productivity was somewhat less than normal, but it wasn't a total famine. So you'll ask, well, why didn't they know right away that Joseph is not a true prophet? If he made a prophecy and part of it didn't come true. And the answer is that we have an attitude towards prophecy, and I'm sure that Joseph, when he made the prophecy to Pharaoh, must have explained to him at least the rules that we play by. A prophecy that something bad is going to happen is really only a warning. It's not an absolute prediction. It's a warning. This can happen unless you do something that you need to do. Never can you test God or a prophet by a prophecy of something bad that's going to happen. You can only test a prophet. Rambam says this word for word. Jeremiah says this. When the Babylonians were attacking the land of Israel, and there were 400 false prophets saying to the king and to the people, don't worry, God is not going to abandon his city, not going to abandon his temple. The Babylonians can never destroy Jerusalem and destroy the temple. That's what they were saying. Jeremiah said to them, you're wrong. The Babylonians are going to be successful. They are going to destroy the temple. And he says, I want you to know we are not on equal terms. Because if what I say fails, I'm not a false prophet. But if what you say fails, then you are false prophets. Why? Because I'm saying that something bad is going to happen. God could always change his mind. God could always delay it. God could cancel it on the grounds that you've done tshuva. There are all different ways in which a prophecy of something bad doesn't have to come true. But you're prophesying that everything will be good. If that doesn't happen, then you're liars. You're liars. So, and of course, that's what happened. Yeah.
I'm trying to understand. They said they were going to be there temporarily.
Yes.
So if they were true to their intentions, at least someone was thinking, okay, when is the right time to go? We're only staying here, making ends meet, and then once things get better, then we can go.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like things did get better.
I agree.
Did they know that, we have to stay here because us being here is making things get better? Or like they have a clock, or we're keeping a keen eye on the external world? Or they just got comfortable, they forgot about it?
It's a very good question. I don't know the answer, but I will believe that I will ask the question. From time to time it bothers me, and I forget it, but you're absolutely right. Since their intention was not to stay, why did they stay? It was 100% right. And I think you have to take into account, they brought everything with them. It was very interesting. Pharaoh said, tell your family, don't have any thought for your possessions. I'll make you rich. I'll give you everything. And Pharaoh said that because Pharaoh wants to have Joseph and his family in his pocket, because that is a guarantee that Joseph is never going to do anything against the interests of Pharaoh and the kingdom, because I have your family. So, and they don't do it. They don't listen. They come with all their animals and all their possessions. Now, that, you could say, was to set them up in a separate area where they wouldn't intermingle with the Egyptians. But on the other hand, it gives them like a home away from home. So there's a danger in that. You're too comfortable, right? But your question is an excellent question. I will ask and get an answer to it, because it's too.
I know why Paro didn't want them to go. That was obvious at the end of Joseph's life, and Yaakov's as well.
That's right, of course, because they've brought such great wealth and such great fortune to the country.
But that question was only posed once they died.
Yeah, I know, right? You're 100% right. Here, the famine ended right away. The question, and there should have been a short-term visit, and they should go on back. I don't know the answer to the question, but I will find out later.